Well, good afternoon, SLAE family. I am just so thrilled to share this amazing author and amazing book with my 10,000 Post-it notes in it today. This is going to be very exciting, especially if you are in the business world. If you own a business, run a business, you manage or build a team, any of those things, you're going to love, love, love this book. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to go ahead and introduce you to our guest today, the brilliant author, Mary Beth Hyland, who has written this fantastic book, Permission to be Human. Here we go. So Mary Beth, can you take a second, please, and just introduce yourself, tell us your professional background and a little bit about how you got to where you are today.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. This is an amazing community. I'm grateful to be in conversation with you and the rest of the community here today. So I have been with my company. I started my company. We just had our 6th birthday actually last week. And I work in organizational culture. So I help organizations to identify their core values and then learn how to have their behaviors, their actions, their policies align with those core values so that their team members and their overall norms are a reflection of what they intend, what they say they believe in, right? So it's actually living that way instead of just professing it on a poster on the wall. Yes. So it's a gift. It's a real gift. I get to work with leaders individually and coach them on that alignment work between their individual values and their behaviors and how they're showing up in those spaces and creating culture around them. And I also get to work with entire teams to help them uncover what those values are and to start the process of creating a culture of intention. And so this work really came out of my history, my past. Before I started my company, I was working for a large nonprofit. And while I was there, I had the privilege of taking over their young professionals program. So many people may be familiar with United Way. I was here in Baltimore at United Way of Central Maryland. And I had this wonderful opportunity to do whatever I thought was right within reason, right? They said, go ahead, Mary Beth, you've been saying you want to get your hands on this, so go do it. And so a program that was checked all the boxes for, like, they had great website, great marketing collateral, those kinds of things, had a good system, back-end system, but there weren't people there. There weren't people showing up. There wasn't an experience where folks were really doing the work to get people to be there versus doing a really nice job with the marketing. And so my job was to really revamp that experience. And within a year, membership quadrupled. Within a year and a half, it became the global best practice model for all United Ways in the world. Wow. On engagement for young professionals. And so that led to people, anytime someone called headquarters at United Way, because they didn't know how to engage young professionals, they would say, you should talk to Mary Beth. So I became the go-to coach for different United Ways on how to create engagement within a cultural norm so that you would have more retention, more membership, all these kinds of things that, we're all looking for that. And what I didn't realize, which became crystal clear in that process, is that what I was doing in meeting people where they are, asking them questions about what they wanted, understanding their values and the core values that united us together, created an experience that were reflections of those values. Those were considered hugely innovative versus just the normal way of doing business. And so that was when I realized there's something here. There's something to this. There's so many people asking for this type of support. And it's not just about young professionals, it's about humans. As humans, we all want those experiences. So that led me to be able to start my own business and start to help organizations who were interested in creating higher levels of engagement and a culture that united people through shared values.
So you have, before we dive into the work, because what you're talking about in this book is just amazing. You are really busy. So you run this company, and I know you've gotten a lot of press recognition. To take all of this process and info and get it in a book had to be a beast amount of work. So just curious, because there's always some budding authors out there. What inspired you to actually take the time to get all that into a book so people like me can learn from you and all of our viewers?
Yeah, I get this question a lot. And I love this question because I definitely was someone listening just a year ago of like, how do you do that? I'm like, please tell me. So I had a book, a different version of this book living inside of me for many, many years. It was something that I had said pretty much since I started my business. Everybody tells you, particularly if you're an entrepreneur, you have to write a book. A book is a new calling card, right? It's the new business card. It's the thing that you need to have for people to consider you an expert or legitimate. And I knew there was truth to that, but you really don't know until you actually do it and see what happens in return of that. And so I kept asking myself every year, when was I going to make the space? I always had an excuse. I always had a reason why I didn't have time. I always had a reason why something else was more important. And what I'm grateful for now that it's been 5 years of not writing the book, having actually done it in the last year, I knew it actually wasn't the right time before. So instead of beating myself up for not having it done 5 years ago when I first had the idea, recognizing that there was a reason I wrote it in this moment. And the book was actually supposed to be called It's a Human Thing, which is so much worse than Permission to be Human is so much better is actually the way I should frame it.
I like the title as is. It's a fabulous title.
Yes. And it was going to be talking about generational things because I started off doing generational work in the workplace. Sure. And I'm just so grateful that that isn't how it turned out, because that's not really the message that I'm here to give. That just was where I was in my journey at the time when I first had the idea to write a book. So when the pandemic hit, this felt like a sign, right? I don't know if you're a sign kind of person, but for me, it was like a lightning bolt sign that I had literally had this question written up on my board. When are you going to write your book? Like, to just asking myself. And as soon as everything started to get canceled and shut down, as you can imagine, pretty much everything I did was in person facilitation. It was like, I think this is the time. I think there's actually time. And I was very fortunate that I got connected with a program. If anybody is into connecting with yourself and your sense of personal alignment when you write, I was very fortunate to go through a program through Modern Wisdom Press that actually teaches you how to use mindfulness tools to open up your different chakras and write from that place of sourcing it from a higher place than like, oh, I have to get this many word count in today.
Yes.
So I was very fortunate to have support like that in actually getting the manuscript together. But you're right, it was a beast. It's
just amazing. I mean, there's so much thought and so much process involved in it. It's really remarkable. I read like a maniac and I just love this book. So let's kind of dive in. Values. I mean, you hooked me in the very beginning of the book because you were talking about values and the impact it has on people and companies, as a matter of fact, when your values are not aligned. And I remember very specifically because you were talking about, if you're working somewhere and it doesn't align with your values. And years ago, when I was practicing law, there was a firm I worked at that was not aligned with it. And it stressed me out. I was so unhappy. And you were talking about the book. I'm going, was she spying on me or something? So if you could take a second and talk to people about the importance of that alignment, whether it's on an individual or a corporate level. I thought your points are fantastic and you are far more eloquent than me. So take it away.
I love that you brought that up because this is something we all have experienced. We all know what it feels like to be somewhere where we're feeling sucked dry. And we also know what it feels like to be somewhere where we're coming alive, right? Where it feels like this is part of my purpose. I'm meant to do this. I'm getting energized by this.
Yes.
So simply put, we are all a walking, talking, living, breathing set of values. And so are our companies. What we don't often realize is that the way that we behave and the way that our organization behaves overall is a reflection of the values, either being lived or being violated. And so when you are clear on what are the things that I need to feel lit up, like what are the things I need to come alive? So for example, for me, one of the things that I need is authenticity. So if I'm in a workplace and I don't feel like I can be authentic, share what I'm thinking, be creative, talk about things that are maybe difficult but necessary in order to move to the next place with each other. If I can't do that, then it's not going to work out for me, because that's a part of the core of who I am, my belief system, what matters to me as a human being on this earth. So sometimes we'll go into situations and experiences, particularly at work, where like, it just sucks there, right? Or like, oh, they're so awful. But we don't get to articulate, we don't put it through the lens of our values to say, it's because my value of connection is being violated every day, right? And being able to really reverse engineer and use a filter of being able to make better choices for ourselves so that we can be in alignment, so that you don't, it's kind of like a bad boyfriend, right? People always say like, you break up with one and then you get into another relationship with another bad boyfriend. Well, it's the same with the workplace.
Oh, yes.
We go into a company, we think this is it, this is the one that's going to have all my hopes and dreams become a reality. And then you find it's a disconnect from your values. Or maybe you don't find that. You think, oh, it's just not good here, right? You don't have that awareness. And then you go to the next job, but you don't do anything in the next job to filter or vet that company for whether or not you're going to have the same experience as before. So it's a really powerful thing when you can say, you know what, these are the three things, these are my three values that I need to be honored in order for me to do well in this work, in order for me to have a higher purpose in what I'm doing every day. So when you can get to the place of articulating that by understanding what's draining and what's filling you, by being able to then connect it to your values that are being ignited or violated, then you can be so intentional about saying, these are the questions I have for you during my interview about what's important to me. And how can I start to be just as much a part of this conversation, so that it's not a one-sided thing, so that I'm vetting you also.
So there's so much you just said in that, it's incredible. So one of the things that's great is the book actually does have a process for defining your values. So if someone's going, okay, well, that all sounds good, but I'm not really that clear on what they are. Do you want to take a minute and explain that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm really excited, actually, in like next month, by October, we're going to have a free online quiz on our website. So on sparkvisionnow.com, you'll be able to go there and take something. It'll be like less than 5 minutes, and you'll get a values profile for yourself by simply going through and deciding what the values, if they drive you, if they are something you aspire, you wish you had, if they don't resonate with you or they describe you. So you can actually start to categorize your values. People don't realize there's all these different types of values, right? Our core values, just values as they are, aspirational ones. And it's really cool when you start to understand, like, for example, politeness is something that really matters to me. It's one of my values. It's something that describes me. And if for some reason we were to get off this and I heard somebody say, Mary Beth was the rudest guest you've ever had, that would be crushing, right? Because that matters to me, but it doesn't drive me. I don't wake up in the morning excited to be polite. So when we can even get down to those layers, right, we can start to say, oh, okay, that's the difference between those two. Or even an aspirational value, like health for me is an aspirational value. My husband is a holistic lifestyle coach, and he really, if it weren't for him, I am confident that I would not be in the health that I am, because it's not my natural way of being, but I aspire, I want that in my life. And so I get to use him as a mentor of that value so that I can develop more of it in my own life by being intentional and saying, okay, these are things I can say yes to and bring more of it in. So one way of doing that is, like I said, you can you could Google like values survey, values quiz, right? And do that. I use something called the Schwartz value scale. You could look that up. We actually have I'll link a blog post for you here too, that has a list of all the values. So you could do that yourself. So that would be a matter of like looking at a list and saying, okay, here's how I'd categorize these. It walks you through that in the book as well. There's a whole section of that. The other way is the reverse engineering way. So it's going back to what we were talking about a moment ago, which is that you can have a real-time feedback experience on what are my values, like what really matters. Right now we're facilitating a 6-week cohort program. And in the second week, this is literally the exercise everyone's doing right now. You can make a list of everything in your life that's draining you and everything that's filling you up. And then once you look at those lists, you can reverse engineer in the things that are filling you. Why is it filling you? What parts of you are being activated? Values are typically nouns. They're words that are going to make really like, what is the thing about this, right? Is it authenticity? Is it connection? Is it growth? Is it empathy, vulnerability, innovation? It's endless, right? What's possible and what you could connect it to. But you'd basically get to the core of what is it about that experience that makes me feel this aliveness that I can whittle down to a word. And then on the side that's draining you, what is it about this experience that's missing, right? What am I not getting from this that's draining me? And so I often say to my clients, your team isn't exhausted because they're doing too much. It's because they're doing too little of what reflects their values.
Yes. And when people don't feel that their values are being satisfied or met, then they tend to take on that I'll do just what I have to kind of mentality, because whether it's conscious or unconscious, there's an element of unhappiness or even resentment that, you know, people experience. And that's when you kind of see the attitude go up, but I mean attitude, not like attitude. So yeah, it's really incredible. And then after you define the values, one of the things that I loved also is you kind of had these filtering questions. So let's say, you know, you read the book, you got your values down, and then you're going, okay, how do I conduct myself and live in a way that is aligned with or consistent with those? So would you please talk a little bit about the questions and how you have that system set up?
Yeah, so there's actually two pieces to what you just described. One is value promises, and the other is value filters. So this is something you can do. Let's just pretend we're doing this in our personal lives. This is the kind of thing that if you came to the awareness of, okay, one of my core values is empathy, and you know that's something you need, you could start by making some promises to yourself on how you're going to show up in the world, right? So yes. I promise to make space to listen to other perspectives and meet people where they are. That could be a promise associated to empathy, right? Now, if you're doing this for a company or an organization, that would be the kind of situation where you'd want the whole team to come together and say, what are we agreeing to with our behavior here, right? What are we together saying is the way, what it looks like to show up in alignment with empathy. And so I think starting with promises is a really great way, whether it's for you individually or for your team at large, but being able to not only say like, these are the things that matter, but now what am I committing to now that I know that? Because otherwise they just sit on a poster, right? And they're just like a nice branded document, but rather like, how am I going to show up? And how am I going to be held accountable, whether I'm holding myself accountable or that there's systems and processes within the company that are going to be holding me accountable as a team, us accountable together. And so then the filter part, which I love, I actually just did this in my meeting before this call. I created a values filter for a team of executives who are looking how to be more thoughtful in the way that they do their one-on-ones with each other and wanting to really use their values as a tool for how they have these conversations. The idea is that many of us, when it comes to life in general, whether you're an entrepreneur or in your own personal life or wherever it may be, when we have a question about which direction to go, we ask everybody else what they think. And we go around and we try to like see what does that person think and what does this other person think and what may be the best way to go, right? Instead of saying, well, what do my values tell me about the way I want to, what direction I want to move in? Because oftentimes, and I'm guilty of this personally, I go to look for people who are successful to gain advice or mentorship or guidance But when I really think about it, they're not living the life I would want to live.
Yes.
They might be making a certain amount of money or have a certain size employee team or, whatever those superficial things are. But what I need to do instead is ask myself, what is it that makes the most sense? So values filters, in a nutshell, are a set of questions. I like to use 10 questions where it's a yes or no answer that you need to get at least 8 out of 10 a yes in order to move forward with that thing. So for example, if you have I just did this actually for myself on how to set boundaries. Okay. Right. Because particularly with the book coming out and all these other really exciting projects that we have on partnerships on the horizon, it's very difficult to manage my schedule, very difficult. And it got to the point where I was really out of alignment with my sense of well-being and I needed to do something about it. And it's funny because I was working with a coach and he's like, well, what would you do in this moment? I was like, I'd make a values filter. I wasn't taking right. We don't take our own medicine in these times, the greatest times of need. We sometimes forget our tools that we created ourselves. And so essentially what I did is I took each one of my values and I reverse engineered a question that would allow me to say whether or not it made sense for me personally to move forward with this versus, okay, this is going to go, my partner's going to take this on, or this is just a kind decline. And so the questions were something as simple as, does this individual understand my capacity in this moment? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, that's good, because then they understand that this isn't something I can turn around for you tomorrow, right? This is something that we'll need to revisit in a month or two or whatever it might be. And essentially I took every single one of those and was able to easily now go through the list and say, if it's not 8 out of 10, yes, I know I'm not moving forward with that. And it was very difficult for me because I'm the kind of person who, if someone's excited about my book and wants to talk, like I'm excited to talk to them, but it doesn't give me the space and the capacity to do any of the other things that I'm here to do. So being able to be thoughtful, like for example, our conversation today, this was something that felt important to me because it went through my values filter and it checked the boxes around, yes, that makes sense. That's a good use of your energy and a meaningful way to use your time and your voice.
Well, I'm very grateful we made the cut. Really happy about that. But it's great because in the book, you apply to a lot of things, like even if you are making a decision with your business, should I invest in something? Should I hire this person?
Yeah,
I mean, you can run the checklist on everything. It's really remarkable, the consistency it provides and the simplicity of it, the way you broke it down. Really powerful.
Thank you.
So, then the other part is maintaining all this. And I believe you called them culture keepers. Wasn't that what it was?
Yes.
In the book. So let's say you get this operating. And again, somebody could be watching this. They're in management at a company. They own a business. They're running a real estate team. They're in sales. They've got 10 kids. It doesn't really make a difference, but if you're leading anything, keeping this going is really powerful. So can you talk to us about the culture keepers, please?
Yes. So this is specific for organizations or teams. And the idea here is that you create a specific initiative around keeping your culture in alignment with its values. And so the idea is that people who are embodying the values already would be nominated by the organization at large. I mean, obviously it depends on the size of your organization, right? If you've got 2 people, everyone's going to be on the culture keeping team. If you've got 2,000 people, right, you want to make sure that it has representation across all demographics, making sure that you're really having good representation across the board and specifically to different teams. And if you have multiple locations, you want to make sure you have a voice there to be able to speak to what's going on. And the idea is that there would be an ongoing conversation that's happening around being able to say, here's where we're really doing great when it comes to our values and how we're showing up. And this is what we're going to celebrate. And this is what we're going to lift up. And this is the proven practice that We're going to encourage more teams to take on because it's working so well in this pocket, right? So let's spread it out to all the pockets. And it's also the kind of thing where you want to have candid and real conversations around what's not working.
Yes.
And where there's potential and opportunity to shift that. And so part of what is explained in Permission to be Human is also questionnaires, surveys, different metrics and tools that, while values are very much can feel intangible, we really want to start to pin them down and make them tangible by being able to say, okay, well, last time we checked in with our team around accountability as one of our core values, we were only a 6 out of 10. So what is the opportunity here? And how can this group of culture keepers be a part of creating initiatives, trainings, operations, things that are going to actually address that as something that can be done? Like, let's take some action around this versus, oh, well, we'll just wait to see what happens in the next survey and hope it works itself out.
Yes. So the time goes by way too fast.
I know. That's what I was realizing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's almost 5:30. I could talk.
Before we wrap up, I want to do two things. One is, can you just pick a success story or, something that you can share of where this was implemented that might be fun for, the viewers to hear about?
Yeah, this is actually one of my favorite stories. For anybody here in the Baltimore region, you may be familiar with Sworno Building Systems. They're a construction company that I've had the privilege of working with almost the entire time that I've been in business here now with Spark Vision. And so we've been doing very intentional culture work, very intentional values work. I got to actually help them to identify their values and start to go through these processes that are in the book. And as soon as we started to move remotely, because of everybody was doing that, right? The beginning of the pandemic, we really shifted. So I am leading a team of culture keepers there. And so our programming and the ideas and the concepts and the things we were working on needed to change, just like everybody was going through that experience. So we really doubled down on their values that ignited greater sense of connection, greater sense of humanity, and a greater sense of empathy, knowing that this is a hard time for everybody. And so 3 months in, the CEO does not typically participate in these meetings. These are a variety of staff of all different departments and levels of the organization. But he decided to join because he wanted to let everybody know that in his history, and this is a family-owned business, in his history with the company, he did not know it was possible for their team to be connected as deeply as they became connected because of the efforts and initiatives that we're doing. And he said, this work has given us permission to be human, and I did not know that was possible here.
Oh, fabulous.
And that's where the title of the book came.
Boom, there it is.
That is where it came. It was it's a human thing otherwise. So it was so beautiful. It was the kind of thing that I actually didn't even catch it the first time he said it, because we have a group of about 10 of us. And then he got off the line and one of the team members said, did you hear what he said? He said, we're giving everyone here permission to be human. And that's when it just was like a lightning bolt. And it was like, well, if that's the work that I get to do, that is a pretty darn good job.
Listen, what you're doing is incredible. And I cannot recommend this book enough. Like, I read like crazy, but this book is great. And so I think so many people found themselves reevaluating a lot of things after the pandemic or during the pandemic. And a lot of people, not only did they start to really have the time to look at their values because they were in the house, but then some of the companies that the people are working with realign their values. And there are people who are in a place where they're going, okay, should I stay? Should I go? I'm not happy. I don't love this. Read the book. And if you run a company, run a team, or do anything, read the book. It's just such a good book. And I will tell you this, that many of the people who have come to speak in this organization, I've had the pleasure of knowing or, over the years that I've traveled and done business, but I stalked you because I love this so much. So we didn't meet until after I read your book, and it's phenomenal. The other thing I want to take a second, Mary Beth, is that you do have a company that provides these services. So do you do it virtually? You're located in Maryland. Can you share, if people want to reach out to you, what you provide for people?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So yes, we primarily work virtually. Obviously, if you're here in the Baltimore region, we're making some exceptions in this time in the world, right?
Mhm.
That will obviously change as things begin to open up across all systems. But yeah, so we're really fortunate that we've been able to migrate our entire business online, and we do a combination of retreats. So retreats for teams who really want to go through this process of understanding their own core values, understanding their team's core values, and really starting to create those understandings of what's the code of conduct, right? What's the value promises that we're going to make? What are these filters that we're going to create to actually live this? And then additionally, I work with executives and leaders who are interested in doing that work within themselves, understanding how they can be in better alignment with themselves. And so we do that through one-on-one coaching, but we also have, as I mentioned, I have a 6-week cohort program that's going on right now called the Journey to Alignment. We have ongoing workshops and experiences that people can take online right now. And also I'm a teacher on Insight Timer, which is a free mindfulness and meditation app. It's got about 18 million users globally. And so what's very exciting in this moment is I have a course on there that's called Knowing and Living Your Values. It's only $20 if anybody wants to take an audio course. It's 15 minutes a day for 10 days. So you can take that 24/7 on Insight Timer. But what's super exciting is that they are about to launch a workplace platform through Insight Timer. And I have been invited to be one of 30 instructors to start providing more support in that way, which is going to be a very accessible program for companies who want to have a tool that they can access on an ongoing basis. Again, anytime they want online. So it's a very exciting moment.
Congratulations.
Thank
Very
you.
exciting.
Thank you.
So what I'd love for you to do, if you don't mind, there are 2 places that people will see this. Some people are in the Facebook group and some people will watch it on YouTube. So if you could post, this is live in Facebook first, if you can post underneath the link to your book and the link to your course so that people don't have to go hunting for it, that would be great. And then of course I can always copy it and throw it over on the YouTube comments as well.
Awesome.
But congratulations on your success. I know you've been acknowledged by Forbes and the Wall Street Journal, and you're on TV, and it's just great. But I'm so grateful you took the time to write this book. And I think it is extraordinary and such a help for so many people. So thank you. And thank you for taking the time to be here and speak with us today. Really.
Oh, thank you so much. Such a gift to be with you. Such a gift to know you, to have you now in my circle too, and looking forward to continuing the conversation.
Oh, absolutely. And if you have events or anything coming up, please post them in the group. We would love to know all that. So
Awesome.
Everybody, that is the one and only fabulous Mary Beth today. And the book is on Amazon. We'll get you the link. Thank you again. And we will see you all next week. Have a fantastic week. Take care. Thank you again, Mary Beth.
Thank you.